sight. In the middle of an open space the birds had built a flooring of twigs, and upon that they had erected a bower about 3 feet high, also constructed of twigs interwoven with grass, and arranged so as nearly to meet at the top in an arched form. "It's a new bower, and more commodious than our last," said the Satin Bird with an air of satisfaction. "What do you think of the decorations?" In a temporary lull of the Frog and Cricket band and the conversation, Dot and the Kangaroo praised the bower and its decorations, and inquired politely how the birds had managed to procure such a collection of ornaments for their pleasure hall. Several young bower birds came and joined in the chat, and Dot was surprised to see how different their plumage was from the satin blue black of the old birds. These younger members of the community were of a greenish yellow color, with dark pencillings on their feathers, and had no glossy sheen like their elders. Each of them pointed out some ornament that it had brought with which to deck the bower. One had brought the pink feathers of a gala, which had been stuck here and there amongst the twigs. Others had collected the delicate shells of land snails and put them round about the entrance. But the birds that were proudest of their contributions were those who had picked up odds and ends at the camps of bushmen. "That beautiful bright thing I brought from a camp a mile away," said a bird, indicating a tag from a cake of tobacco. "But it isn't so pretty as mine," said another, pointing to the glass stopper of a sauce bottle. "Or mine," chimed in another bird, as it claimed a bright piece of tin from a milk can that was inserted in the twigs just above the entrance of the bower. "Nonsense, children," said a grave old Satin Bird. "Your trifles are not to be compared with that beautiful object I found today and arranged along the top of the bower. The effect is splendid." As he spoke, Dot observed that twined amidst the topmost twigs of the construction was a strip of red flannel from an old shirt, a bedraggled red rag that must have been found in an extinct campfire, judging by its singed edges. The day Dot had lost her way she had been threading beads, and she still had upon her finger a ring of the pretty colored pieces of glass. She saw the old Satin Bird look at this ring longingly, so she pulled it off and begged that it might be added to the other decorations. It was instantly given the place of honor, over the entrance and above the piece of milk tin. This gift from Dot caused an immediate flow of conversation, because every bird was pleased to have something to talk about. They all began to say how beautiful the beads were. "Quite too lovely," said one. "What a charming little human!" exclaimed another. "Just the finish that our bower required," was a general remark, and a great many kept exclaiming, "So tasteful, so sweet, how elegant, exquisite, it's a love, it's a dear," and so on. A great deal more was said, but the oldest bower bird, thinking that all the adjectives were getting used up, told the Frogs and Crickets to start the music again, so as to keep the excitement going, and all further observations were drowned in the noise. Presently the younger birds flew down to the bower and began to play and dance. Like a troop of children, they ran round and round the bower and to and fro through it, gleefully chasing each other. Then they would assemble in groups and hop up and down and dance to one another in what Dot thought a rather awkward fashion, but she was thinking of the elegance and grace of the native companions, who can make beautiful movements with their long legs and necks, whilst these little bower birds are rather ungainly in their steps. What amused her was to see how the young cock birds showed off to the little hens. They were conceited fellows, and only seemed happy when they had 5 or 6 little hens looking admiringly at their every movement. At such times they would dance and hop with great delight, and the little hens, in a circle round them, watched their hops and steps with absorbed interest. Immensely pleased with himself, the young dancer would fluff out his feathers so as to look as big as possible, and after strutting about, would suddenly shoot out a leg and a wing, first on one side and then on the other, then spring high into the air and do a sort of step dance when his feet touched the earth again. Endless were the tricks he resorted to show off his feathers and dancing to the best advantage, and the little hens watched it all with silent intentness. In the meantime the frogs and crickets stopped to rest, and Dot could hear the conversation of some of the old birds perched near her. A little party of elderly hens were discussing the young birds who were dancing at the bower.
"I must say I don't admire that new step which is becoming so popular amongst the young birds," said one elderly hen, and all her companions rustled their feathers, closed their beaks tightly, and nodded their heads in various ways. One said it was rough, another that it was ungainly, and others that it was unmannerly. "As for manners," said the first speaker, "the bower birds of this day can't be said to have any."
And all her companions chorused, "No, indeed."
"In my young day,"
continued the elderly hen, and all the group were sighing,
"ah, in our young days,"
when a young hen perched on a bough above them and interrupted pertly,
"Dear me, can't you good birds find anything more interesting to talk about than ancient history?"
At this the groups of gossips whispered angrily to one another,
"Minx, hussy, wildcat,"
etc., and the rude young bird flew back to her companions.
"What I object to most in young birds," said another elderly hen, "is their appearance. Some of them do nothing all day but preen their feathers. Look at the overstudied arrangements of their wing flights, and the affected exactness of their tail feathers. One looks in vain for sweetness and simplicity in the present day young bower birds." "Even that is better than the newer fashion of scarcely preening the feathers at all," observed yet another of the group. "Many of the young birds take no pride in their feathers whatever, but devote all their time to studying the habits of out-of-the-way insects."
A chorus of disapproval from all present supported this remark.
"Studies that interfere with a young hen's appearance should not be permitted," said one bird.
"What is the good of knowing all about insects when we live on berries and fruit?" asked another.
"The sight of insects gives one the creeps,"
said a third. "I am thankful to say all my little hens care for nothing beyond playing at the bower and preening their feathers," said an affectionate bower bird mother. "They get a deal of attention paid to them."
"No young satin bird would look at a learned little bower hen," said the bird who had first objected to untidy and studious young hens. "For my part, I never allow a chick of mine even to mention insects unless they are well-known beetles."
Dot thought this chattering very stupid, so she went round a bush to where the old fathers of the bower birds were perched. They were grave old fellows, arrayed in their satin blue-black plumage, and she found them all more or less in a grumbling humor. "Birds at our time of life should not have to attend parties," said several, and Dot wondered why they came. "How are you, old neighbor?" said one to another. "Terribly bored," was the reply. "How long must we stay, do you think?" asked another. "Oh, until these young fools have finished amusing themselves," answered its friend. The only satin birds who seemed to Dot to be interested in one another were some engaged in discussing the scarcity of berries and the wrongs done to bower birds by white humans, destroying the wild fig and lily-pilly trees. This grievance and the question as to what berries or figs agreed best with each old bower bird's digestion were the only topics discussed with any animation. Dot soon tired of listening to the birds, and returned to the Kangaroo, who asked her if she cared to stay any longer. The little girl said she had seen and heard enough, and judging by this one she didn't care for parties. "Neither do I," whispered the Kangaroo. "They make me feel tired, and somehow they seem to remind one of everything one knows that's sad, in spite of all the gaiety."
"Is it gay?"
inquired Dot, hesitating a little in her speech, for she had felt rather dull and miserable. "Well, everyone says it's gay, and there is always a deal of noise, so I suppose it is," answered the Kangaroo.
"I'd rather be in your pouch, so let us go away," entreated Dot,
and they left the Bower place without any of the birds'